The airbag dust still hung in the air like pale smoke when I opened my eyes. The sound of metal ticking, the faint hiss of the engine, and my heartbeat, all melting into one blurred moment. My body was trembling, my hands were bleeding. I could smell the burnt fabric from my jacket and the sharp tang of antifreeze. My phone had flown onto the passenger seat. It was cracked, but it still worked. The screen lit up with my husband's photo. A smiling man in a navy suit, holding a wine glass at a restaurant table. I dialed him. Once. Twice. 3 times. He didn't answer. Finally, a text arrived. I'm having lunch with my female best friend. I cannot leave. You should call my father. For a second I thought I'd hit my head too hard. Maybe I was hallucinating. I read it again. Then again. My chest tightened, not from the airbag but from something deeper, heavier. Disbelief. Lunch. While I sat there, blood running down my arm, car door jammed, heart pounding, he was eating lunch. I called his father next. He answered on the first ring. Sweetheart, are you okay? Where are you? His voice, calm but sharp, was like a light in the fog. Within minutes he had sent an ambulance and arrived himself, long before my husband even texted again. On the ride to the hospital I stared out the window at the blur of city lights. My mind wasn't on the pain or the stitches. It was on the message. The kind of message that rewires your heart forever. At the hospital they wheeled me in for scans. I could hear the nurses whispering, "She's lucky to be alive. Lucky." When my husband finally showed up hours later, he smelled faintly of wine and cologne. His first words weren't, "Are you okay?" They were, "You scared me." I didn't think it was that serious. I looked at him, really looked. The man I'd once trusted to protect me couldn't even pick up the phone. My name is Rachel. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever realized in one brutal instant that the person who vowed to love you would rather finish his meal than see if you're still breathing? Because that's where my story begins. And trust me, it ends exactly where it should. The next morning, the smell of antiseptic clung to the air. I woke to the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor and a dull ache behind my ribs. The accident replayed in flashes. Headlights, glass, silence. But what hurt more was remembering his text. He was sitting in the corner chair, scrolling through his phone. He didn't notice I was awake. "Daniel," I whispered. He looked up, startled. "Oh hey, you're awake." His voice was flat, too casual, like he'd just walked into a coffee shop, not a hospital room. "Why didn't you answer when I called?" He shifted in the chair, thumb hovering over the screen. "Rachel, I told you. I was with Emily. I didn't know how bad it was." "Would it have mattered?" I asked quietly. He frowned. "Come on. Don't start." I came as soon as I could. But I could smell the lie, not on his breath but in the pauses between his words. I'd been married to him for 6 years. I knew every tone, every inflection. That wasn't guilt. That was inconvenience. His phone buzzed again. He flipped it face down. Something inside me shifted then. Not anger, not yet. Just a sharp, steady awareness that something between us had cracked. Later that afternoon his father came by again, Mr. Carter. He looked older than I remembered, his gray hair messy, his eyes tired but kind. He pulled a chair to my bedside. "Rachel," he said, "I'm sorry about all this. I don't know what Daniel was thinking." I smiled faintly. He wasn't. He hesitated. Then, "If it's all right, I'd like to handle some of the insurance paperwork for you. Daniel's been distracted." Distracted. That word landed like a cold coin. When Daniel came back from grabbing coffee, I noticed a lipstick smudge on his wrist, faint coral pink. Not mine. I didn't say a word. I just watched him unpack excuses with practiced ease. The nurse came in to check my vitals. "You're lucky, Mrs. Carter," she said softly. "Your husband's father was the first to arrive. He even rode in the ambulance with you." I looked at Daniel. His eyes darted away. That night when he finally left to get some rest, I sat in the dark room staring at my phone. The screen was cracked but it still worked. I scrolled through our messages. Months of mundane texts, grocery lists, reminders. Nothing resembling love. Then I opened his Instagram. His latest post was from last night. A photo of a restaurant table set for two. Candlelight wine glasses. Caption: "Sometimes the best company isn't planned." My body went cold. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was awake. And something inside me, something patient, calculating, began to breathe. 3 days later I was discharged. The doctor told me to rest for 2 weeks, avoid stress and let my ribs heal. I nodded. But how do you rest when your world has already fractured? Daniel insisted on driving me home. The silence between us was so thick it felt like fog. He turned on the radio to fill it, but I turned it off. "I saw your post," I said quietly. He froze, fingers tightening on the steering wheel. "What post?" "The one from dinner." The caption. "Oh. Pause. That was just Emily trying to make me eat." She thought I looked tense. I smiled. The kind of smile you give when you've already stopped believing. Right. Must have been exhausting. All that eating while I was in an ambulance. He sighed. "Rachel, please. You're twisting things." But I wasn't twisting anything. I was finally seeing them straight. When we got home, the house smelled faintly of his cologne, the same one he wore on anniversaries. Only this time it clung to a wine glass on the kitchen counter, next to a lipstick-stained napkin. I didn't say a word. I just walked upstairs, each step slower than the last. That night Mr. Carter called to check in. His voice was steady, but there was something beneath it, restrained anger. "Rachel," he said, "I don't want to speak out of turn, but I need to ask. Were you alone when the accident happened?" "Yes." "And Daniel?" "At lunch. With Emily." He exhaled deeply. "That's what I thought. He told me he was stuck in traffic." There was confirmation. Lies layered upon lies. I could have cried, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. Like when a wound stops bleeding because it finally scabs over. The next day I started noticing details I had ignored for years. The hidden second phone charger in his briefcase, the faint perfume scent on his jacket, the way he suddenly turned his phone upside down at dinner. It wasn't sudden. None of this was. It was habit. Repetition. Comfort in deceit. So I started taking notes. Literally. Dates. Times. Words. Not to hurt him, not yet, but to remind myself that I wasn't imagining this. That I wasn't crazy for feeling unwanted in my own marriage. One night when Daniel fell asleep beside me, I unlocked his phone using his fingerprint. He was too drunk to notice. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. There they were, messages between him and Emily. Nothing explicit, just enough to slice through me in silence. "Lunch was perfect today. You always know what I need. Can't wait for next weekend." Next weekend. I closed the phone, laid it gently back on the nightstand and turned away. That was the moment I stopped loving him. Not because he betrayed me, but because I finally understood he didn't even see it as betrayal. In the days that followed, I moved through the house like a quiet ghost, making tea, folding laundry, smiling when he looked, disappearing when he didn't. Daniel had become polite. That's how you know love is gone. When kindness replaces affection. When good morning sounds like a formality, not a feeling. He'd started working late again. Emily's name no longer appeared on his phone, but her perfume still lingered on his shirts. He was smarter now, or at least he thought he was. But I was smarter too. I didn't confront him. I observed him. Every lie became data. Every omission became a note. I wasn't gathering proof for revenge yet. I was gathering clarity. The thing about betrayal is that it teaches you patience. It slows the clock until every second feels deliberate. One evening, I overheard him in the kitchen talking softly. His tone, that gentle laugh, it wasn't one he used with me anymore. "You know I'd rather be with you," he said. "But she's home. She's recovering. Like I was a burden, a chore." When he hung up and walked into the living room, I was sitting on the couch with a blanket draped over my knees, pretending to watch TV. He smiled faintly. "You okay?" "Just tired," I said. "You should rest too." He nodded and kissed my forehead, a gesture so hollow it felt like a performance. Later that night, I lay awake and realized something I hadn't dared to before. He wasn't just cheating emotionally. He was rewriting our story in real time, reshaping himself as the patient husband and me as the fragile wife. And somehow that was worse. Because if he saw himself as the victim, my pain didn't even count. The next morning I went for a walk. My first since the accident. My steps were slow, my ribs still tender, but the air was cool and sharp. I stopped by a small cafe on the corner, ordered coffee and stared out the window at nothing. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Carter. "Can we talk privately? It's about Daniel." My pulse quickened. We met later that day at a quiet park bench near the hospital. He looked exhausted, older somehow, like he'd been carrying the weight of a truth too long. He didn't waste time. "Rachel, I found something. Daniel took out a joint bank account 3 months ago. Not with you." My breath caught. "With who?" He hesitated. "Emily." Silence. Long enough for the wind to shift the leaves between us. He reached into his coat pocket and handed me a printout. Transaction history. Hotel stays. Dinners. Jewelry. And there was proof. Cold, undeniable proof. But I didn't cry. Not even a little. Because at that moment I realized something powerful. If betrayal is the moment someone stops seeing you, then revenge is the moment you start seeing yourself again. And I was done being invisible. When I got home that evening, I didn't confront Daniel. I made dinner. Lit candles. Set the table like everything was fine. He came in late, loosened his tie, kissed my cheek out of habit and sat down. "Smells good," he said. It was the same tone he used when talking to his secretary on speakerphone. I watched him eat. Slowly. Calmly. He had no idea I knew everything. He didn't notice that I'd already printed his bank records. Or that I'd quietly called our insurance agent that afternoon. Or that I had told his father everything except one thing. What I was about to do. Mr. Carter had listened to me silently at the park. When I finished, he said only, "If you decide to leave him, I'll help you. But if you decide to teach him a lesson, make it count." Those words kept echoing in my mind. Make it count. So I started planning. Not revenge in the movie sense. No rage, no theatrics. Just control. Precision. If Daniel wanted a new life, I'd give him one. But on my terms. The next week, I called our accountant pretending I needed to update my emergency information. That small formality gave me access to every shared document, including the password to his hidden account. He had moved $47,000 there in small transfers. Enough for a secret future, but not enough to hide from a woman who'd built that future with him. I transferred half back. Quietly. Legally. The money was marital, I had every right. Then I changed the password. Step 1. Secure stability. Step 2 came through Mr. Carter. He was a retired attorney, quiet and methodical, the kind of man who never raised his voice but always got what he wanted. He called me one evening. "I've seen his spending records. You don't deserve this, Rachel." "I know," I said softly. "But I'm not leaving yet." "Good," he said. "Let him show you who he is." And Daniel did. Over the next 2 weeks he became bolder. Later nights, secretive calls, perfumed shirts. He thought I was healing. But really I was documenting. Every lie. Every expense. Every message. Then came the final piece. Emily posted a story on Instagram. A photo of her hand holding a glass of wine. The reflection in the glass unmistakable. Daniel's watch. It was almost poetic. That night I asked him casually, "When's your next business trip?" He smiled, eyes flickering. "Next weekend. Chicago." I nodded. "Take the blue suitcase. The small one." He didn't notice the way my voice had steadied, or that I was already planning what he'd find when he got back. Sometimes revenge doesn't roar. It whispers. And my whisper had just begun. I told myself the plan had to be clean, legal, and small enough to feel inevitable. Like truth finally catching up to a man who'd been dodging it for months. I had no desire to ruin anyone for sport. I wanted consequences that matched the crime. Exposure, embarrassment, the practical unraveling of the little life he'd tried to build in secret. Step 1 was already done. Money recovered, password changed, accounts secured. That removed the easy escape route. Step 2 was documentation. Receipts, messages, dates, the little breadcrumb trail he'd left everywhere. My accountant copied and time-stamped everything. Mr. Carter notarized printed bank statements and a short affidavit. Where the money went when it moved, hotel names, the dates that matched Emily's Instagram. It was as boring and authoritative as litigation paperwork. The kind of thing you can't argue with. Then I needed immediacy. I wanted Daniel to be forced to look at the facts without his comfortable filters. He liked secrecy because secrecy let him wrap himself in plausible deniability. Remove the cloak and you force a reckoning. So I called the hotel in Chicago where his business trip was booked. I gave them his confirmation number and explained I was a relative trying to reach him urgently. I lied. I said my elderly father needed him for a family emergency. The front desk asked if I wanted them to hold a message or leave an envelope. I said envelope. I told them to mark it urgent and to be discreet. The woman on the other end of the line had the kind of voice that told me she'd done favors for strangers before. She agreed and asked for my contact number. I gave her Mr. Carter's. Next I arranged the contents. I printed a packet, a cover letter in my own voice, calm, factual, without accusation, followed by bank printouts, screenshots of messages, the Instagram post with the candlelit table and a few photos I'd taken at home. A wine glass with lipstick, the napkin, a snapshot of his watch on Emily's Instagram story. No screaming language. Just a file of evidence with my name on it. At the bottom, a note. I'm not asking for an explanation. I'm asking you to look. Then I asked Mr. Carter to be the other half of the plan. He would call the hotel a few hours after the envelope was delivered and identify himself as a worried father expecting his son. The goal wasn't theatrics. It was to make sure the envelope reached Daniel quickly and that someone who understood the weight of what he was about to see would be available afterward. If Daniel panicked, Mr. Carter could be the steady voice to meet him, not to lecture but to confirm what he'd found. On a practical level, I did one more thing. I sent anonymized copies of the packet to Daniel's email and to his work address. Not accusations, just the documents and my contact. Nothing inflammatory, just the truth in an unadorned package. If he wanted to keep hiding, he could. If he opened it and pretended not to see, that was on him. When I booked the train to Chicago, I told Daniel I was going to visit a friend. I didn't want him to suspect anything, but I wanted the option to be nearby if things spiraled. Mostly, though, I wanted distance. Because there's clarity in watching a man's life tilt from a place where your face isn't there to soften the blow. The afternoon he left, he kissed my cheek in that boxy, practiced way and said, "I'll call you from the airport." I nodded and watched him go, counting breaths like prayers. 2 hours later, Mr. Carter called. "He's checked in," he said, voice low and steady. "Envelope delivered to room. He's still in the lobby." My stomach dropped and steadied at once. The part of me that wanted dramatic confrontation wanted to run to him and scream. The part that had been planning wanted to wait. Because if this worked, if he opened that envelope, then whatever happened next would be honest. I sat down on the kitchen floor and listened to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the house finally reflecting the same stillness I felt inside. Then my phone buzzed with a single text from an unknown number. He opened it. I didn't read anything else. I folded my hands, breathed, and waited for the next move. He called that night. Not a text, not a voicemail. A real call, the first one where his voice actually trembled. "I got your envelope." I didn't respond right away. The silence stretched long enough for him to fill it with guilt. "I don't know what you think you saw." I cut him off softly. "I didn't think anything, Daniel." "I know." He exhaled sharply. I could hear the faint hum of a hotel air conditioner behind him, the sound of him pacing. "It's not what it looks like. Emily and I, we're just friends. I admit I got too close, but you opened a joint bank account with her?" I said. My voice was calm, clinical. "You bought her jewelry. You paid for her hotel stays. That's friendship." He didn't answer. The silence after that question was the truest thing he'd said in months. Then quietly, "Did my father help you?" I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "He didn't need to. You did it yourself." He groaned, not in pain but in humiliation. "You had no right to go through my accounts." I laughed softly. And you had no right to turn our marriage into an alibi. He started to raise his voice but then stopped. The next words came out lower, smaller. Right. I messed up, okay? I was scared. You were always so distant lately and after the accident. Don't, I whispered. Don't use my pain as your excuse for pleasure. He went silent again. I could picture him standing by that hotel window, tie loosened, guilt creeping in but pride refusing to let it settle. That was Daniel, too afraid to love honestly, too proud to admit it. I'm coming home, he said finally. No, I said. Stay right there. Your father will meet you in the morning. He has some papers for you. What papers? His voice cracked. Divorce papers. And financial disclosures. You'll sign them before you leave that city. You're serious? As serious as the accident you ignored. He didn't speak after that. I heard the faint sound of him setting the phone down, maybe sitting on the bed, maybe realizing the weight of what he'd lost. When the line went dead, I didn't cry. I walked to the living room window, pulled the curtains aside and let the night air hit my face. It smelled clean like freedom. The next morning Mr. Carter called. His voice was steady, almost proud. He signed everything, he said. Didn't argue, didn't fight. Just sat there. When I left, he said something strange. Tell her I didn't think she'd actually do it. I smiled faintly. He never thought I'd do anything for myself. Mr. Carter paused. What do you want me to do with his things? Donate them, I said. The suit jackets first. He chuckled softly. You're something else, Rachel. When I hung up, I felt something shift inside. Not victory, not triumph. Just peace. Because revenge wasn't about hurting him anymore. It was about ending the noise, the lies, the endless waiting for him to change. I walked through the quiet house, sunlight cutting through the blinds, landing on the framed photo from our wedding. I picked it up, looked at it one last time, then placed it gently face down. Not out of anger. Out of closure. The man in that picture was gone long before I knew it. And the woman beside him, she was finally coming back to life. A week passed. Then I didn't hear from Daniel again, not directly. Only through the quiet updates Mr. Carter shared, like faint echoes from another life. He'd moved out of his apartment. Emily apparently hadn't stayed. Her Instagram went private 2 days after his name started circulating at work. The HR investigation about financial impropriety wasn't my doing. His joint account with her had triggered a compliance flag when I reversed the transfers. His company's legal team handled the rest. Poetic, really. He'd built his lies using company time and company money. All I'd done was let the truth walk itself to the door. Mr. Carter came by one afternoon carrying a small box. Inside were a few things Daniel hadn't claimed. A wristwatch, some cufflinks, a framed photo of the three of us from years ago. I traced my finger over the glass, remembering how genuine his smile had once been. How easy it was to mistake convenience for love. Do you want me to throw these out? Mr. Carter asked gently. I shook my head. No. I want to remember what not to settle for. He smiled sadly. You remind me of your mother. Calm after the fire. After he left, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, the same way I had that night after the accident. The city outside was quiet. The light fell soft and silver across the living room, peaceful in a way that felt earned. Sometimes revenge doesn't scream. It restores balance. It teaches people what empathy should have taught them first. Daniel's final text arrived 3 weeks later. I know I can't fix it. I just hope someday you'll forgive me. I didn't reply. Not out of bitterness, but because forgiveness had already happened. Privately, in the quiet hours where I finally stopped reliving every betrayal. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about locking the door behind them without hate in your heart. I sold the house a month later. The money I'd quietly reclaimed went toward a new start. A small place near the coast, where the evenings were cool and the air smelled like rain. Mr. Carter helped with the paperwork, and before he left he said, "You were kinder than he deserved." Maybe. But I needed kindness for myself more than vengeance for him. One night I stood on the balcony overlooking the water, the moonlight shimmering across the waves. For the first time in months I felt light, free. And in that stillness I whispered to the sea, "You taught me what love isn't. For that I'll never forget you." Then I turned off my phone, took a deep breath, and let the sound of the waves carry away the last fragments of the woman who once begged to be chosen. I wasn't his victim anymore. I was the author of my own peace.